Now we have to learn how to complete the worksheet using the columns of debit and credit under the adjustments column. When we finished exercise 7, we added these adjustments. We had a $500 credit to the supplies account. We had a $5,920 credit to the accumulated depreciation for equipment. We had the similar $500 supplies expense, which was a debit, and we had the $5,920 debit for the depreciation expense on the equipment. Now these accounts, supplies, accumulated depreciation on equipment, supplies expense, and depreciation expense on equipment, need to be retotaled. We start here with supplies. They had an initial value in the trial balance of $700. That is a debit balance. And because of the adjustment, we have a $500 credit. That means over here, when we transfer to the balance sheet, that total is 700 minus 500, which leaves us with 200. With the accumulated depreciation for equipment, it started out with a credit balance of $15,400. This also is a credit for the adjustments of $5,920. We add these two together and we end up with a total on the balance sheet, a credit total of $21,320. Down here with the supplies expense, we didn't have a trial balance amount, so this $500 just simply goes to the income statement debit side, and the depreciation expense for equipment also goes to the income statement on the debit side. When we total our income statement and our balance sheet now, we must remember to include these new adjusted values. So for our income statement, what we have is a total of $68,720 on the debit side and $90,000 on the credit side. We find out that our net income, when we take the difference between these two totals, that will be $21,280. When we add these two, obviously, from previous units, we know that these two numbers at the bottom in the total line will be the same, in this case $90,000. Now when we deal with the balance sheet, we have to remember that we have this $200 debit amount, which was the supplies. That's all that's remaining in supplies. And we add that to all the other accounts, we end up with $79,200. We also have to consider the accumulated depreciation for equipment of $21,320. That will give us a total of $57,920. Our net income needs to be added on the credit side, and then our two balances will be the same, $79,200. So let's review the steps in preparing an 8-column worksheet. First of all, we write the heading on the worksheet. We write the trial balance on the worksheet, all the information from the trial balance. We gather the data needed to prepare the adjustments. We prepare the adjustments, total, balance, and rule the adjustments column. We transfer all the amounts to either the income statement or the balance sheet columns. We total the income statement and balance sheet columns and determine the net income or net loss. We balance both of the income statement and balance sheet columns, and we rule the worksheet. Now we need to take another step and talk about a 10-column worksheet. Many businesses use a 10-column worksheet to display an adjusted trial balance. As you might have noticed on the 8-column worksheet, we didn't really have the final results after we did the adjustments. So some people like to see those results on the worksheet, and that's why we use a 10-column worksheet. The adjusted trial balance is prepared on the worksheet after the adjustments have been completed. The two extra columns are prepared to ensure that the ledger accounts are still in balance. The adjusted trial balance columns come just to the right of the adjustment columns. You'll notice here that I've outlined in red the adjusted trial balance. What happens here is we take our original trial balance values, in this example here it's 13,000, and if there are no adjustments, we just simply transfer that amount to the appropriate column. So you'll see 13,000, 7,000, but here in our supplies account we started with 1,000 and we have a credit of 100. That leaves $900 in our adjusted trial balance. So what we've done is we've taken the debit of 1,000 and the credit of 100, found the difference, and that's $900. In this next example, we have prepaid insurance, which was 720. That was debit, and now we have a credit of 60. So that reduces our adjusted trial balance to $660. Prepaid rent started as $5,100. $1,700 was credited. Therefore, that leaves us with $3,400 right here. Equipment doesn't change. Accumulated depreciation for the equipment does change. We started with $2,400 in the debit column. We added another $160 in the debit column. That means that when we add those two, we get $2,560. The remaining accounts are just as they were on the trial balance, so we don't need to really go over those. But we have these new accounts: supplies expense, insurance expense, rent expense, and depreciation expense for equipment. All these accounts right here were not part of the original trial balance. They were adjustments. So we have to include them in this new adjusted trial balance column. We total them and we rule them. Here are the steps for preparing that 10-column worksheet. You write the heading on the worksheet, you write the trial balance on the worksheet, you gather the data needed to prepare the adjustments, you prepare the adjustments and total balance and rule the adjustment columns. Now we transfer all amounts to the adjusted trial balance columns and recalculate the balances where necessary. Total, balance, and rule the adjusted trial balance column. This is a new step when we're going from an 8-column to a 10-column worksheet. We transfer all amounts in this adjusted trial balance to either the income statement or balance sheet columns. We total the income statement and balance sheet columns and determine the net income or net loss. We balance and rule the worksheet. All right, now that we've got the worksheet done, we have to prepare the financial statements. The new expenses that came from the adjustments must be included in the income statement. Notice that we have these new values for supplies, insurance, rent, and depreciation on equipment, and these must be reflected in the income statement. The accumulated depreciation is shown in the assets section as a subtraction from equipment under fixed assets of the balance sheet. So when we do the balance sheet under fixed assets, we have to make sure that we have the equipment, which never changes, and we have to use the word less right here to show that we're subtracting the accumulated depreciation. So that's 12,000, subtract 2,560. That will leave us here with a value for fixed assets of 9,440. If there were any other fixed assets in here, we would have to include those as well. Your assignment for today is to complete questions 16, 17, and 18 and complete exercises 8 and 9. We're going to do the review sheet in the next class. Therefore, the test will be 2 days from today.